Kevin Stefanski didn't see it coming. Not like this. One moment, you're confident in your offensive philosophy, your system, your choices. The next moment, Todd Monken is out here calling Shedeur Sanders unstoppable, and suddenly everything clicks into place in a way that makes you realize you might have been looking at this all wrong. This isn't just hype. This isn't just another quarterback controversy. This is a reckoning. A moment where the entire NFL landscape shifts because one young player walked into a building and exposed what everyone's been dancing around for 2 years. Deshaun Watson didn't fail because he wasn't talented. Kevin Stefanski's offense didn't fail because the scheme was broken. They failed because they were never meant for each other in the first place. And now, as Shedeur Sanders settles in and starts making plays that leave defenses scrambling for answers, the truth is becoming impossible to ignore. The Browns aren't just getting a new quarterback, they're getting clarity on everything that went wrong before. Instant regret hits different when it comes from a place you didn't expect. Kevin Stefanski felt it, not like a gentle tap on the shoulder, but like a linebacker charging full speed, completely blindsiding you when your back's turned. 1 second, you're riding the wave of your own confidence. You've got a system. You've got a plan. You've got a quarterback you invested in. Everything seems manageable, controllable, fine. Then Todd Monken steps to the microphone and changes the entire conversation with a few well-chosen words. When Monkin said what he said about Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a casual compliment thrown out between questions. This wasn't the kind of thing a coach says in passing and moves on. No, Monkin put real weight behind it. He called Shedeur the most unstoppable quarterback he's ever witnessed. Think about that for a second. Monkin's been around the league. He's worked with elite talent. He's seen what top-tier quarterback play looks like. And here he is, making a statement that doesn't just elevate Shedeur, it implicitly questions everything that came before. The timing makes this sting even more. This wasn't said in a vacuum. Monkin made this declaration after watching Shedeur compete directly against Deshaun Watson in practice, after seeing Dillon Gabriel try to keep up, after witnessing the offseason battles where one guy showed up ready to prove something, while others seemed to be going through the motions. The contrast was impossible to miss. And when Monkin put his reputation behind Shedeur's name, he wasn't just complimenting a young player. He was sending a message to the organization, a message to the defense, a message to the entire league. This kid is different. For Stefanski, that moment had to sting. Because what Monkin was really saying between the lines was this: the system you've been running, the philosophy you've been defending, the choices you've made, they finally have the right quarterback to execute them. Or maybe, just maybe, Shedeur is so talented that he makes your system work regardless. Either way, it's an indictment. It's a suggestion that what went wrong with Watson wasn't Watson alone. It was the fit. It was the mismatch. It was the disconnect between what the coach wanted to do and what the quarterback was capable of delivering. And that's the thing about blindsides. They hurt most when you see them coming in hindsight. Stefanski had to be sitting there, watching Shedeur operate, thinking back to conversations he had with Watson, thinking back to adjustments he made, thinking back to the pivot to Ken Dorsey, the scheme changes, the attempts to retrofit everything. All of it was trying to solve a problem that maybe never needed solving if you had the right guy from the start. The wildest part is how fast this shifted the entire narrative. One statement from Monkin, and suddenly everyone's looking at Shedeur differently. Not as a promising rookie trying to find his footing, but as the solution, as the answer. As the guy who makes everything make sense. When a respected coach with Monkin's track record puts his credibility on the line, people listen. They pay attention. They start rewinding tape. They start comparing notes. And once you start comparing, once you start really looking at what Shedeur's doing versus what Watson's been doing, the gap becomes impossible to unsee. For a coach like Stefanski, that's got to be a difficult pill. Because coaching is about believing in your system. It's about faith that if you stick with it, if you refine it, if you get the right personnel, it'll work. But what happens when the system finally gets the right personnel, and it turns out the personnel you had before was the problem all along? What happens when the narrative flips and suddenly everyone's questioning your decisions from 2 years ago? That's the blind side. That's the hit that nobody sees coming until it's too late. Because by the time Monkin's making these statements, by the time the entire building is feeling the energy shift, by the time defenses are studying tape and realizing they've got a genuine problem on their hands, it's already done. The moment has passed. The choice has been made, and all that's left is watching it play out. Stefanski is not stupid. He can read a room. He can feel when momentum shifts. He can sense when the organization's focus has moved on to something new. And right now, that focus is on Shedeur Sanders, not on fixing what didn't work with Watson, not on finding the perfect adjustment for Ken Dorsey's system, but on unleashing something fresh, something young, something that hasn't been worn down by injuries, controversy, or contract pressure. That realization, that moment when you understand the game has changed and you're no longer holding the cards you thought you were holding, that's the blindside hit that keeps you up at night. Not because you made a bad decision then, but because you're realizing, in real time, that the future isn't what you planned, and there's nothing you can do to change it now. Let's get real about something that's been obvious to anyone paying close attention. Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski's offense were never meant for each other. Not in a fundamental way. Not in a way that could be fixed with minor adjustments or scheme tweaks or bringing in a new coordinator. This was a mismatch at the core level. Stefanski's offense is built on a foundation that harks back to a different era of football. We're talking under center snaps, heavy play action packages, boots to the outside, layered concepts that look brilliant on a whiteboard but require a specific type of quarterback to execute at a high level. The kind of quarterback who thrives in structure, who operates best when the play develops the way it's drawn up, who doesn't necessarily need to improvise because the system is so well constructed that every option is accounted for. Here's the thing. When Watson first got to Cleveland, there was optimism. The initial conversation seemed promising. Stefanski showed him the playbook, discussed the philosophy. Watson nodded along. They signed the contract. Year one happened, and on the surface, it looked decent enough. But underneath, cracks were forming. Because Watson's strengths, his ability to extend plays, his improvisational genius, his capacity to create off script, those things were being constrained by a system that demanded precision timing and adherence to structure. So what did the organization do? Rather than accept the mismatch and adjust the system to Watson's strengths, they doubled down. They fired coordinators. They changed the entire philosophy of what they wanted to do offensively. They tried to fit Watson into a mold that just didn't suit him. And you know what that created? Hesitation, inconsistency, confusion. A quarterback who was constantly second-guessing himself because he was being asked to operate in a way that contradicted his natural instincts. Then came Ken Dorsey. The hope was that a fresh perspective, a new coordinator, would solve the problem. That Dorsey would bridge the gap between Stefanski's old-school philosophy and what Watson actually needed. But here's what happened instead. You had two conflicting ideas battling for dominance in the same space. Dorsey brought his own offensive concepts. Stefanski had his. They tried to blend them together, but instead of creating a cohesive system, they created confusion. The routes felt stale. The plays felt sluggish. The options felt restricted. Think about it from Watson's perspective. He came to Cleveland as one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, a guy who could take over games. A guy whose mobility and arm talent made him virtually unstoppable when he was operating at his peak. And then he walks into an offense that essentially says, stay in the pocket, go through your progressions, execute the play as designed. No improvisation, no freelancing, no doing the things that made you great in the first place. Year after year, they continue to avoid tackling the core issue head-on. Instead of stepping back and saying, maybe this system isn't the right fit for this quarterback, and we need to fundamentally rethink this, they opted for quick fixes, minor adjustments here and there, a new play package, a different approach to formations. But never, and this is crucial, never truly resolving the underlying mismatch. It's like trying to repair a cracked foundation by just slapping on a fresh coat of paint. It might look better for a moment. From a distance, you might think everything's fine, but the structural integrity is still compromised. The problem is still there. It's just hidden. And as this continued, Watson's performance didn't just decline. It fell sharply. The confidence eroded. The execution became inconsistent. The explosiveness that once defined his play, it just wasn't there anymore. Instead of taking a step back and reconsidering the fundamental approach, the organization went all in. More commitment. More investment. More attempts to make something work that fundamentally wasn't working. But here's where it gets interesting. Because while all of this was happening with Watson, while Stefanski was trying to force a square peg into a round hole, something else was developing. Enter Shedeur Sanders. Now, Shedeur walks into the same offense, the same under-center concepts, the same play-action boots, the same layered schemes. All the things that seemed to constrain Watson, that seemed to limit his abilities, that seemed to demand a type of quarterback he simply wasn't. And what does Shedeur do? He thrives. He doesn't wait for the system to change for him. He doesn't ask for modifications or adjustments or new coordinators. He steps in and says, "I'm going to make this work." The difference isn't subtle, it's glaring. Watson was fighting the system. Shedeur is working with it. Watson was being constrained by structure. Shedeur is being elevated by it. And that's not because Watson suddenly became less talented. It's because Shedeur has a different skill set, a different mindset, a different way of operating that actually aligns with what Stefanski wants to do. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the mismatch was real. It was never about the offense being broken. It was about the quarterback and the system being fundamentally incompatible. And now, watching Shedeur succeed in the exact same offense that Watson struggled in, that's when the blindfold comes off. That's when you realize what went wrong wasn't as complicated as everyone was making it out to be. When Todd Monken made his statement about Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't the kind of thing that got buried in a press conference or mentioned casually between other topics. This was deliberate. This was intentional. And most importantly, this was public. Monkin called Shedeur the most unstoppable quarterback he's ever witnessed. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about a coach who's been around elite talent. We're talking about someone whose opinion carries weight in NFL circles. We're talking about a guy whose credibility is built on understanding quarterback play at the highest level. And he put that credibility behind a statement about a young player that essentially reshapes the entire conversation around the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. But here's what makes this even more significant. Monkin didn't just praise Shedeur in a vacuum. He made this statement in direct comparison to others. Specifically, he put Shedeur above Deshaun Watson, above Dillon Gabriel, above the other quarterbacks on the roster competing for the starting position. Reports suggest that during the offseason, Monkin watched Shedeur go up against Watson and Gabriel repeatedly, and the separation was undeniable. This wasn't a situation where Monkin was hedging his bets or leaving room for interpretation. No, he was making a clear, unambiguous statement. This kid is the guy. This is who we're building around. This is the quarterback I believe in. The timing of this endorsement is crucial. It came after sustained, direct observation. It came after Monkin had seen Shedeur operate in practice against professional defenses, against experienced quarterbacks, against the actual grind of NFL preparation. It wasn't based on highlight reel footage or a good day in pads. It was based on consistent, day in and day out evaluation over an extended period. When a coach like Monkin, someone whose offensive system is intricate and demanding, puts his name behind a quarterback like this, it's not empty praise. It's an investment. It's a statement that says, I understand what this kid can do. I've seen it up close. I've tested it. And I'm confident enough in my evaluation to say it publicly, knowing that my reputation is on the line if I'm wrong. The way Monkin framed it is also worth examining. Unstoppable. That's a specific word choice. Not talented. Not promising. Not has potential. Unstoppable. As in, defenses can't stop him. As in, there's something about his game that breaks traditional defensive schemes. As in, he's operating at a level where conventional strategies don't apply. This kind of statement doesn't happen in a vacuum in the NFL. Coaches don't just throw around superlatives without thought. They're aware of the narrative they're creating. They understand that publicly endorsing one quarterback over another sends a message not just to the organization, but to the entire league. Other teams are listening. Other defensive coordinators are listening. Other scouts are listening. When Monkin said what he said, he was essentially painting a target on Shedeur's back while simultaneously removing Watson from serious consideration. For Watson, this had to be a gut punch, because this wasn't criticism disguised as praise for someone else. This was a direct statement that, in Monkin's professional opinion, Shedeur Sanders is a better, more unstoppable quarterback than you are, right now, in this moment. In this building, the speculation around why Monkin felt compelled to make this statement publicly is worth considering. Some insiders suggest that what Monkin witnessed during the offseason was so clear, so undeniable, that staying silent would have been irresponsible. Others claim that Monkin was essentially forcing the organization's hand, making it impossible to deny that Shedeur is the future, regardless of what front office dynamics or financial commitments might have been pulling in different directions. There's also the angle that Monkin was drawing a line in the sand. a way of saying, I'm not going to coach around this anymore. I'm not going to try to make something work that fundamentally doesn't work. I'm not going to invest my energy in trying to develop Watson when this kid is right here, ready to go, operating at a different level. What's fascinating is how this statement reframed the entire quarterback competition. Before Monkin spoke, there was still a debate, still a discussion, still a question about who the future might be. After Monkin spoke, the debate effectively ended. Not because Monkin's words were law, but because his evaluation carried enough credibility that it shifted the entire narrative. The Browns' front office had to have heard this, had to have absorbed the implications, had to have understood that one of their most important offensive minds just publicly declared that Shedeur Sanders is the guy. That's not something you can ignore or downplay. That's a statement that comes with real consequences, real implications, real weight. And from a league perspective, this was a signal, a way of saying, pay attention to this kid. He's different. He's better than what's been happening here. He's unstoppable in ways that traditional quarterback evaluation might not immediately capture. Monkin's endorsement did more than elevate Shedeur. It placed Watson in a position where redemption became incredibly difficult. Because once a respected coach publicly states that another quarterback is superior, the psychological shift has already happened. Even if Watson has a good game, the narrative is still that he's playing for redemption in an offense that's now clearly built around someone else. That's the power of a statement like Monkin's. It's not just analysis. It's narrative control. It's reshaping how everyone, from the organization to the league to the fans, perceives the quarterback situation. Rumors have been swirling around the Browns facility about what actually went down during the offseason. Not the polished version that gets presented to the media, but the real, day-to-day grind. And according to reports coming out of Cleveland, what people witnessed was something that fundamentally shifted the entire dynamic of the quarterback room. Shedeur Sanders showed up to the facility every single day with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. Not the kind of intensity that comes from someone trying to prove they belong, but the kind that comes from someone who genuinely believes they're destined for something greater, and they're not about to let this opportunity slip through their fingers. We're talking about a young player walking into an NFL building for the first time, surrounded by veterans, in a situation where everything is on the line, and he's approaching every single rep like it's the difference between making a Super Bowl run or becoming a cautionary tale. That's not normal. That's exceptional. That's the kind of mindset that separates the guys who make it from the guys who fade away. Every drill, every repetition, every throw, every read. Shedeur was treating them as if they were game-decisive moments, not because coaches were demanding it, not because anyone was forcing him to perform at that level, but because that's how he approaches the game. That's his baseline. That's what separates him from the field. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson was dealing with something different. Reports suggest he was managing lingering injuries from the previous season. Not career-threatening stuff, but enough to affect his rhythm, his timing, his ability to operate at full capacity. When you're dealing with physical limitations, when you're rehabbing, when you're trying to get back to 100%, your offseason looks different from someone who's coming in fresh, healthy, and hungry. Dillon Gabriel, the other quarterback in the room, was also struggling to keep pace. Not necessarily because he's not talented. He is, but because the energy around him wasn't the same. The focus wasn't there. The urgency wasn't present. When you've got one guy in the room who's operating at a different level, who's attacking every moment like his life depends on it, it creates a contrast that becomes impossible to ignore. And here's the thing about work ethic in the NFL, it's contagious in both directions. When one guy is grinding, when one guy is showing up early and staying late, when one guy is demanding more from himself than anyone else is demanding from him, it either elevates everyone around him or it exposes those who aren't willing to match that intensity. In this case, it exposed the gap. The offensive line noticed it. Receivers noticed it. Defensive players getting reps against Shedeur noticed it. Coaches watching from the sidelines noticed it. There's a presence that certain players bring to a facility that just changes the atmosphere. That changes what people believe is possible. And Shedeur brought that from day one. What's particularly interesting about reports coming out of Cleveland is the suggestion that Shedeur's approach wasn't aggressive in a way that created friction. It wasn't about showboating or making others look bad. It was about an internal drive so powerful that it inspired people around him. Teammates wanted to match his intensity. Coaches wanted to figure out how to unlock even more of what he could do. The entire operation shifted around his presence. For Watson, this had to be a stark reality check. Here's a guy who came to Cleveland as a generational talent, someone who was supposed to be the franchise quarterback for the next decade. And now, he's watching a young prospect come in and immediately demonstrate a level of commitment and intensity that's operating on a different plane. Some insiders suggest that what happened during that offseason wasn't just about physical performance metrics. It was about demonstrating something fundamental about who these players are as competitors. Who was willing to sacrifice everything for the moment? Who was treating this as an audition? Who was operating with something to prove versus someone who felt like they'd already proven everything they needed to prove? Shedeur came in like he had something to prove to the world, to the organization, to his teammates, to himself. That hunger, that relentless pursuit of excellence, that's what separates players who become stars from players who become cautionary tales about wasted potential. Reports also suggest that Shedeur's work ethic wasn't limited to the field itself. We're talking about film study. We're talking about understanding the system at a level that usually takes veterans years to develop. We're talking about asking questions, absorbing information, building a knowledge base that allowed him to operate with a level of sophistication that usually comes with experience. That's the compilation that matters. It's not just physical talent meeting hard work. It's intelligence meeting drive. It's preparation meeting opportunity. It's the full package operating in sync, and that's incredibly rare to see, especially in a young quarterback stepping into the league for the first time. For Watson, watching this unfold had to be demoralizing. Not because Shedeur is some once-in-a-generation talent that makes everyone else look obsolete, but because he represents something that Watson's injuries and the system limitations prevented him from doing: showing up every single day and proving your worth through relentless execution and effort. The offseason narrative in Cleveland shifted completely because of what people saw during those weeks. Not speculation, not hype, but tangible, observable evidence that something different had arrived in the building. And that difference, that shift, that energy, it became impossible to ignore once the season actually started rolling. There's a moment in every quarterback's career where the game becomes real. Not in a symbolic sense, but literally real. Defenders are flying at you. The pocket is collapsing. Everything you drew up on the whiteboard is being torn apart by 11 guys whose only job is to destroy your day. That's when you find out who a quarterback actually is. Shedeur Sanders has shown a capacity to manage that pressure in ways that most young quarterbacks don't even approach until they've been in the league for multiple years. We're not just talking about physical talent or arm strength or mobility. We're talking about the mental component, the ability to slow the game down when everything around you is accelerating, the ability to stay calm when chaos is unfolding at full speed. When defenses load up the box, when they're bringing pressure from every angle, when they're testing whether a young quarterback is ready for the moment or about to break under pressure, Shedeur doesn't panic. He adapts. He reads the shift. He adjusts his progressions on the fly. He understands that what was designed on the board is now obsolete, and he needs to have the mental flexibility to create a new solution in real time. That's not something you can coach. That's not something that emerges from repetitions. That's something that comes from a certain makeup, a certain resilience, a certain belief in your ability to figure things out even when the world is collapsing around you. In contrast, Watson has shown signs of struggling with that aspect. When the pressure comes, when things break down, when the play needs to be salvaged, there's a hesitation, an uncertainty, a moment where it looks like he's thinking rather than reacting. And in the NFL, that millisecond of hesitation is the difference between a completion and an interception. There's also the element of how Shedeur processes mistakes. Reports suggest that when he makes an error, a bad read, an inaccurate throw, a decision that didn't work out, he doesn't dwell on it. He doesn't carry it into the next play. He analyzes it, learns from it, and moves forward. That's a level of compartmentalization that separates elite competitors from everyone else. Watson, by contrast, seems to be struggling with the weight of his mistakes. Not in a way that suggests he doesn't care, but in a way that suggests the burden is accumulating. Each incompletion, each interception, each play that didn't work out the way it was supposed to, they add up, they compound, they start to eat at the confidence. And that's where it gets interesting from a psychological standpoint, because Shedeur is operating from a place of abundance. He's young, he's hungry. He's got everything ahead of him, Every play is an opportunity to prove something. Watson is operating from a place of scarcity. He's got a massive contract. He's got expectations. He's got the weight of organizational investment. Every play is being evaluated through the lens of whether he's justifying that money. That's not to say Watson isn't working hard or isn't trying. It's to say that the psychological framework is different. The stakes feel different. The pressure feels different. And in football, psychology is everything. What's remarkable about Shedeur is how he seems to thrive under pressure rather than wilt from it. It's like pressure is fuel. When things are moving fast, when defenses are blitzing, when the chaos is at its peak, that's when he seems to lock in even more. That's when his reads become sharper. That's when his decision-making becomes clearer. Some analysts credit this to his preparation, the hours he spent in film study, the way he's learned to anticipate defensive movements, the knowledge base he's built that allows him to operate with a level of sophistication that seems beyond his years. When you've done that work, when you've studied the game at that level, pressure becomes an opportunity to apply what you know rather than something that overwhelms you. There's also the element of belief. Shedeur's belief in his own ability to find solutions seems unshakable. It's not arrogance. It's not overconfidence. It's a quiet certainty that when things break down, he's going to figure it out. That certainty translates into play. It translates into how teammates perceive him. It translates into how coaches approach giving him responsibility. Leadership, at its core, is about inspiring confidence in others. And Shedeur's ability to manage pressure, to stay calm in chaos, to think clearly when everything is moving at full speed, that inspires confidence. It says to the people around him, this guy has it figured out. This guy is going to find a way. This guy is reliable when it matters most. Watson's struggles with pressure management have ripple effects beyond just his own performance. It affects how the offense operates around him. It affects how much responsibility you're willing to give him in critical moments. It affects team morale and confidence in the quarterback position. The gap in this area is stark. It's one of the most observable differences between the two when you watch tape. And it's one of the most predictive of future success because pressure never goes away in the NFL. It only increases. The playoffs bring more of it. The Super Bowl brings even more. If you can't manage it in the regular season, you definitely can't manage it when the stakes are at their absolute highest. Shedeur's demonstrated ability to handle pressure with poise and clarity. That's the hallmark of a quarterback who's built to withstand the grind of an NFL season and perform when it matters most. When you sit down and actually watch the film, not highlight reels, not condensed games, but full drives, full sequences, multiple possessions, the reality becomes crystal clear. And that reality is uncomfortable for anyone invested in the idea that Watson and Shedeur are in the same conversation right now. Let's start with the deep ball, because that's where things get the most dramatic. Shedeur's accuracy on throws going 20-plus yards downfield is something that has scouts and analysts asking questions about what they're actually seeing. We're talking about throws to Isaiah Bond where the ball hits him perfectly in stride, right in the sweet spot, with distance and touch that shows complete control of the football. We're talking about passes to Jerry Jeudy that are placed with such precision that they're essentially catchable only by that specific receiver, in that specific spot, at that specific moment. That level of accuracy on the deep ball isn't common. It's not something you see from every NFL quarterback. It's something that separates elite talent from good talent. And it's something that Watson simply isn't demonstrating at the moment. Watson's arm strength has noticeably diminished compared to what he displayed in previous years before the injuries. Reports from people who have studied his tape extensively suggest that the velocity isn't there anymore. The touch is still present. Watson's always had great touch, but the explosiveness, the ability to put the ball where only your receiver can get it, that's declined. Whether that's a lingering effect from injuries, conditioning, or simply the natural wear and tear of the position is debatable. But the decline is observable. Now let's talk about mobility, because this is where the contrast becomes even more stark. Shedeur's ability to extend plays, to create off script, to buy time with his feet while his eyes continue to move through progressions, that's elite. When the pocket breaks down, when defenders are closing in, when the play is falling apart, Shedeur doesn't immediately run. He moves laterally, he buys time, he keeps his eyes downfield looking for receivers to break open. This is particularly crucial because in today's NFL, the ability to move when the structure breaks down is increasingly important. Defenses are faster, more athletic, more sophisticated. You can't rely on the pocket staying intact. You need a quarterback who can function in space, who can make plays when things aren't going according to plan. Watson's mobility hasn't disappeared, but the explosiveness has diminished. His escapes now look more like survival mechanisms than game-creating plays. He's getting out of dodge, but he's not putting defenses in a bind with his ability to move. And that's a significant difference when you're talking about modern NFL quarterback play. Then there's the pre-snap and post-snap reads. Shedeur's capacity to diagnose defensive coverage before the snap is remarkable. He's identifying safeties. He's understanding where the pressure is coming from. He's making adjustments to routes and progressions based on what he's seeing. All of this happens with the same visual processing speed that typically takes veterans years to develop. He's doing it as a young player stepping into the league. Watson's reads have become more mechanical. Not in a way that suggests he doesn't understand what he's seeing, but in a way that suggests there's hesitation in his decision-making. It looks like he's thinking rather than reacting. And again, in the NFL, that's the difference between success and failure. When you watch Shedeur move through his progressions, it's fluid. It's efficient. It's decisive. First read isn't there, second read is open, ball's out. The timing is perfect. The communication with receivers is clear. There's no wasted motion. There's no indecision. He operates with a certainty that's genuinely unusual for someone this early in their career. Watson, on the other hand, has shown signs of overthinking situations. There are moments where his first instinct, which is usually sound, gets overridden by doubt. That doubt creates hesitation. That hesitation creates opportunities for defenders to collapse the pocket or force him off his spot. It's a subtle thing, but it's observable and it's impactful. Let's talk about decision-making under pressure, because this is where the individual quarterback comparison becomes crystal clear. When defenses bring pressure, when Watson's pocket is collapsing, he's looking to escape and create. Shedeur, in that same situation, is often hitting a receiving option that was already designed to be there against that specific pressure look. It's the difference between a quarterback reacting to chaos versus a quarterback who anticipated the chaos and prepared for it. The composure gap is the most glaring difference, though. Shedeur plays like someone who believes he has the answer to every defensive look. It's not arrogance, it's confidence built on preparation and results. Watson plays like someone who's searching for answers, like he's trying to remember something he learned rather than relying on instinct and knowledge. Watch the way Shedeur handles incompletions. He moves to the next play like it never happened. No adjustment of the helmet, no frustration, just execution. Watson has shown signs of letting incompletions linger. It's not visible anger necessarily, but there's a psychological effect. The incompletion carries into the next play. It affects the decision-making on the next opportunity. The tape tells a story that's becoming harder and harder to ignore. And that story is that Shedeur Sanders is operating at a level that Watson simply isn't matching right now. Whether that's due to the injuries, the system, the contract pressure, the mental aspect, or some combination of all of it, the reality is undeniable. On tape, when you break down what both quarterbacks are actually doing, Shedeur is winning that comparison decisively. There's something intangible that happens when the right player walks into the building. You can't always quantify it in statistics or metrics. You can't capture it on film in the traditional sense. But if you talk to people around the organization, if you pay attention to how the team operates, if you understand the subtle ways that a single person can reshape an entire culture, you see it. Shedeur Sanders' presence in the Browns facility has created a shift that's palpable. And it's not just about what he's doing individually. It's about how his presence is elevating everyone around him. The offensive line, which struggled at times last season, is showing increased cohesion and focus. Receivers are catching passes with more confidence, running routes with sharper precision, and operating with a belief in their quarterback that translates into on-field performance. Reports coming out of Cleveland suggest that players are responding to Shedeur's intensity and professionalism in ways that go beyond typical veteran leadership. This is a young guy, someone who's brand new to the organization, and yet he's established a level of respect that's usually reserved for veterans who have put in years. That's not something you see every day. That's a testament to something fundamental about who Shedeur is. The energy in the building has shifted because Shedeur operates from a different place. He's not carrying the weight of a massive contract. He's not dealing with the pressure of justifying past investments. He's just playing football at the highest level he can, and that simplicity, that clarity of purpose, is contagious. Teammates feel it. Coaches feel it. Everyone in the organization feels it. When you walk into a facility where the quarterback is locked in, where he's operating with complete focus, where he's not distracted by external noise, that sets the tone for everyone else. Suddenly, what seemed like excuses become efforts. What seemed like obstacles become opportunities. The entire psychological framework shifts. Coaches have talked about how Shedeur approaches meetings differently. He's not just showing up and absorbing information passively. He's engaged. He's asking questions. He's trying to deepen his understanding at a level that most young quarterbacks aren't operating at. That approach spreads. It influences how other people in the room approach their work. And there's a leadership element that's impossible to ignore. Shedeur hasn't needed to call team meetings or deliver speeches. He's led through action. He's led through the way he operates every single day. He's led through the example he sets, and that's infinitely more powerful than any words could be. For Watson, this shift in the building has to be disheartening. He came to Cleveland as the leader, as the guy who was supposed to be the face of the franchise. And now, he's watching a young player come in and effortlessly establish a level of respect and influence that Watson's been struggling to maintain. That's a difficult position to be in, and it's not something that's easily overcome by just playing better or working harder, because Shedeur is already doing both at an elite level. The chemistry developing between Shedeur and the offensive personnel is remarkable. Receivers know where he's going to put the ball before it gets there. They're running routes with increased anticipation because they trust his accuracy and timing. The offensive line is playing with increased urgency because they understand that the guy behind them deserves their best effort. These are the things that don't always show up in traditional statistics, but they're the foundation of winning football. They're the reason teams gel. They're the reason some offenses flow while others sputter. And right now, the Browns' offense is flowing in a way it wasn't before. There's also the defensive perspective. From what's being reported, opposing defensive coordinators are facing a completely different challenge when they prepare for Shedeur. With Watson, there was a level of predictability. You could game plan against him. You could design looks that would give him trouble. With Shedeur, that becomes exponentially more difficult. His range, his ability to make plays in unconventional ways, his capacity to extend plays and create, it's breaking traditional defensive schemes. That fear, that sense of not knowing exactly how to attack the offense because the quarterback has too many solutions, that spreads throughout the locker room. Defenses respect players they can't account for. And right now, Shedeur is operating at a level where traditional defensive strategies are less effective. The locker room dynamic has also shifted in subtle ways. There's a confidence in the building that wasn't present before. Not arrogance, not overconfidence, but a genuine belief that this organization is moving in the right direction, that the future is now, rather than something being waited on. That's powerful. That's the kind of belief that carries teams through rough patches and builds winning cultures. For someone like Watson, watching all of this happen, understanding that the building's focus has shifted away from him and onto Shedeur, that has to be incredibly difficult. But that's the reality of football. Players have windows, teams evolve. And when someone new comes in and immediately demonstrates that they're the future, it forces everyone else to accept that reality, whether they like it or not. The cultural shift happening in Cleveland right now is real, it's observable, and it's pointing definitively in one direction. Shedeur Sanders has changed the atmosphere of the organization, and everything happening on the field is a reflection of that changed atmosphere. Let's cut through all the speculation, all the hope, all the what-ifs. Let's just look at what's actually happening in Cleveland right now and understand what it means for the immediate and long-term future of this organization. The Browns' direction is no longer debatable. It's not a question of whether Shedeur Sanders is going to get opportunities or whether management is going to continue exploring options at the quarterback position. The organization has made a choice. Whether they've explicitly stated it or whether they've just accepted it through action, the message is clear. This is the guy we're building around going forward. That choice has immediate consequences for Deshaun Watson. His time as the franchise quarterback, the guy everyone's expecting to lead this team to a Super Bowl, is functionally over. Not because Watson has been released or benched in some dramatic fashion, but because the organization's belief has shifted. The attention has moved. The investment, the real investment, not the financial one, but the belief and the focus, has gone elsewhere. Watson will still be on the team. He'll still play in games. He'll still get opportunities. But he's no longer the future. He's no longer the guy. And in professional football, that's a sentence that's incredibly difficult to come back from. Because when an organization loses faith in you, when they stop believing that you're the solution to their problems, everything becomes harder. The play calling becomes more conservative. The expectations become lower. The opportunity becomes limited. For Watson, the trajectory from this point forward is either redemption or irrelevance. And redemption becomes incredibly difficult when you're not the centerpiece of the organization's plans anymore. When the team is investing emotionally and strategically in someone else. When the locker room has already moved on. Now, let's talk about what this means for Shedeur and the long-term implications. He's coming in as a young quarterback, which typically means adjustments, growing pains, lessons to be learned. But Shedeur is already operating at a level that suggests he might bypass a lot of that typical development curve. He's not just talented, he's smart, he's prepared, he's mentally tough. He's got the kind of makeup that allows young quarterbacks to accelerate their development and impact winning immediately. The age factor here is crucial. Because Shedeur is doing this at a time in his career when young quarterbacks are supposed to be making mistakes, supposed to be inconsistent, supposed to be learning the game at warp speed. But he's already operating with a level of sophistication and decision-making that usually takes years to develop. Just imagine what happens when experience actually aligns with that talent. When he's played 3 more years in the league. When he's gone through multiple playoff runs. When he's accumulated the kind of institutional knowledge that comes from thousands of reps at the highest level. This is the beginning of something for the Browns. Not the peak, not even the middle of the journey, but the beginning. And that's genuinely terrifying for everyone else in the league who's going to have to deal with this quarterback for the next decade or longer. The financial implications are also interesting. Because the Browns are going to be paying for 2 quarterbacks, Watson's contract is still there, still massive, still tying up resources. But in practical terms, the organization's future is being built around a guy on a rookie contract. That's the kind of salary cap advantage that can be transformative. That's the kind of resource allocation that allows teams to build deeper supporting casts and sustain winning over an extended period. From a pure franchise perspective, what's happened in Cleveland is remarkable. They've essentially reset their quarterback situation while still maintaining stability. They're not in chaos. They're not in free fall. They're transitioning from one era to the next in a way that minimizes organizational disruption. For Kevin Stefanski, this is redemption in its own way. Because now his offense, the system that didn't work with Watson, suddenly has the quarterback it was supposed to have all along. Or maybe Shedeur is just good enough to make any system work. Either way, Stefanski gets to move forward without the constant questioning about whether his approach to football is outdated. The upcoming season will be fascinating because it's going to settle a lot of questions. Is Shedeur for real, or is he benefiting from an easy off-season competition and some optimistic tape study? Can he sustain this level of performance over a full NFL season? Will there be growing pains that hadn't been apparent yet? These are the things that will become clear once the competition actually starts and real defenses start implementing real game plans. But here's what we already know. Shedeur Sanders has fundamentally shifted how an organization perceives its future. He's done it through preparation, work ethic, talent, and a certain intangible quality that separates transcendent players from everyone else. He's forced conversations. He's forced choices. He's forced a franchise to accept that the future they were waiting on has suddenly arrived early. And for anyone in the NFL paying attention, for any organization that might be questioning its own quarterback situation, Shedeur's emergence is a reminder that sometimes the solution isn't what you planned. Sometimes it's something new, something unexpected, something that comes in and makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. The Browns are moving forward with Shedeur Sanders. That's the reality. That's what's happening. And everyone involved with this organization, from the coaches to the players to the front office, understands that this is the direction. Whether Watson accepts it or fights it, whether Stefanski fully embraces it or has doubts, whether the fans are ready for this transition or still clinging to the past, The train has left the station, and it's headed directly toward Shedeur Sanders being the face of this franchise for the foreseeable future. That's not speculation. That's not hype. That's just the reality of what's unfolding in Cleveland right now, and everyone involved understands exactly what it means. The narrative in Cleveland has completely transformed. What was once a story about a quarterback with a massive contract trying to find his footing in a specific offensive system has become a story about a young player arriving and immediately establishing himself as the future. Todd Monken's statement about Shedeur being unstoppable wasn't just casual praise. It was a declaration that everything everyone thought they knew about the Browns' quarterback situation needed to be re-examined. Kevin Stefanski's offense, which struggled to maximize Watson's talents, suddenly has a quarterback who elevates it effortlessly. The system that seemed obsolete, that seemed to constrain rather than unleash, is now showcasing the kind of quarterback it was designed for. Or maybe Shedeur is just exceptional enough to thrive in anything. Either way, the result is the same: clarity. The organization finally understands its direction. For Watson, this represents the beginning of the end of his time in Cleveland. Not immediately, but inevitably. The belief has shifted. The investment has moved. The future is no longer his. For Shedeur, this is just the beginning. Every game will add more proof. Every week will deepen the conviction. And every opponent that faces him will have to grapple with a problem that traditional defense schemes might not be equipped to solve. The Browns have found their franchise quarterback, and everyone involved in the organization finally seems to understand it.